basically I have moved my activities from electronic pop music a bit more towards contemporary music. Not necessarily academic contemporary music, but more approach with acoustic instruments, chamber orchestras, light scanners that are turned into stupid data that control modular synthesizers or other sound sources and stuff like that. So I got a bit bored of all the kind of repeating club concerts. So I wanted to stretch out like a spider more into bigger places like this one here. This is a big place. I just need more space. The older you get, the more space you want.
Do you see yourself moving to the countryside then one day?
No, I hate the countryside. So I want to have more space, but inside the city, which means I have to push others away.
I think I'm similar, but I saw you performing in Atomium once for a bunch of like 24 of 6-year-olds. I wasn't actually allowed there, but it was your Gagarin label day for kids. Talking about living somewhere, would you live in Atomium if you would have had a place there?
That's very tempting. I often thought about this. I think they even have some kind like a Jugendherberge upstairs, like for young people. But, you know, if you're all the time eating candy, then even candy doesn't taste like candy anymore. So it would be so beautiful, but too beautiful. It's better for me to visit the Atomium once in a while and then get the radiation and then go home again.
I see. We're here with 20 MS20s. If I remember right, it's like I was really obsessed with seeing the flyer Dennis made from one of your gigs in 2005, I think, in Antwerp. It was a release party of Idiotenmusik, if I'm right. Or was it 2006? I don't know anymore.
No, around that time. 5, yes.
So I remember I was too young to go, because I mean somehow I listened to my parents too much at that age, so I didn't go to your gig. I went to the one afterwards.
Okay.
But I actually dreamed about your gig, and this kind of shaped how I think electronic music should be performed. But I didn't see you play. And still up to today, I still think about that dream.
So the dream is better than the reality. That's always like that.
I think so too.
It's like imagining things is creating so much energy of desire and of how you would like something to be realized in the most perfect sense, that mostly trying to achieve it is a disappointment. So it's much better if you have your dream and then the reality is something completely different, or at least so varying from what you originally expected, that it's like a second discovery for you. So you have the dream and you have like the sequel, which is different. So you have like even twice the experience, right?
I agree. Yeah.
This is a really industrial, mean version of the MS20. It's really hardcore. It's very much like White House, if you know that band, you know. Pure, brutal industrial music.
How was it back then as a kid to just start doing this? How like That's quite amazing. Like you just started doing it, right?
Yes, I mean, I spend most of my time at home working with the synthesizer, also totally unobserved by my friends. Only one friend of mine with whom I made music was really into it.
The Eagles Intuition Zwei.
Yeah. And one older guy who was our manager back then. But otherwise, nobody was interested. They were not impressed, even not by the sounds, independently from my music taste. I mean, for them, it was just not existing.
So it's funny that then later on it becomes cult, you know, like how stuff like that becomes cult. Like, how come people don't see something happening the moment when it's being created? What is this? Why don't people open themselves up only to do so 10 years later? Why is that?
I think that's no. I think it's you're right. I try to see the cult potential of something at the moment it happens, but I think that only by a distance of time, people are often able to judge how much in balance or disbalance something that was created was with its time. So I'm sure that, for example, the people who invented the drum machines, the like TR-808 or 909, they didn't want to create Detroit techno with it. No. They had no idea that this would be happening in the future. They wanted to create kind of a programmable drum computer for people who would play on marriages, on weddings, I mean, you know? So for really nasty musicians, would just go like and reproduce music that already existed. They built these drum computers, but then they were taken by someone else. And I think that's always the best thing that can happen to culture, that something is invented, but then used in a way that it was not intended to for by someone else. And that can create a whole movement and a whole cult, if you want. This was for sure not made to create to mark the beginning of industrial music. Let's make a synthesizer and then they show them really brutal music for these hardcore industrial people. No, they probably just wanted to make a Moog synthesizer, just a cheaper one. And then all the Moog synthesizer fans, they came like, oh, what's this? I just spent all my money for this. It doesn't sound like a Moog. It doesn't sound like a Moog. But then someone else around the corner was like, hey, can I just borrow your Moog synthesizer for a week? And then he started to, produce the first industrial record with it. And, yeah. You don't have to say please! Get down on your knees! Like this, yeah. So, how to arrange an orchestra of 20 Korg MS20? I think the only possibility is to approach it a little bit from the chamber music side. That means to try to get people to play it in a dynamic way. So, not like this. I mean, this can be part of it, but rather like... For example, swelling from here, taking over there, coming back here, stuff like that. So move in the room and make a very strict selection of sounds for everyone. So, and not let everyone play all the time. But I will give you one little secret away. One idea I have is I want to use it also because I will use it also for another composition that I make. I want them to start at one frequency in the middle range, maybe like something like this, and then I want them to play all the same tone, tune in on each other, and then work with micro detunings into all directions. So it's like this, so that they start at one tone and very slowly they branch out into up and down, all kinds of frequencies. I will give them exactly durations and directions of how far and where they tune the instrument to, but so that we start with one tone and then we get 20 different microscopic or microtonal intervals. And I think with this I can already create something really beautiful. And it's not something that is very typically for the MS20. It just is a very unusual way of using just this amount of synthesizers and using them like a spectral, hand-played spectral filter or something like that. I can imagine something rhythmical, as we were just testing here, running around here. So like creating percussive sounds for each one, then just really working with the space movement, like letting them play the stuff one after the other, and then maybe creating something like games. A game could be someone creates a rhythm and the person just on the cross side, on the other side, has to imitate that rhythm, and then someone creates another rhythm, and so that we jump back and forth with a mixture of improvisation and repetition. And some other parts will be very, very strictly organized and noted. So they really have to play like notes together. And I want to also use the possibility of the MS20 to create these beautiful mid-range sounds.
These
like
resonating,
like vague, vague sounds, like a bit like Fata Morgana.
Yeah. That's why the synthesizer is like the
we have like 20 people playing tones that I will give them certain notes, certain keys, and they all come together as nice chords, but in this kind of verklärte Nacht.
Yeah.
I think that can work really well.
It's going to be very pretty. I think that's one of the most beautiful parts that people with synthesizers forget about, just playing with the resonance melodically, that's where the beauty of synthesizers lay in.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have people who turn it all the way, and then it's very, how do you say it, like obvious, but when you have still your oscillator coming through together with the tone of the resonance, it's beautiful. So